Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and professors, my name is Yi from Masaryk University, Czech Republic. Today, my presentation would like to introduce a measurement of the depression for the Chinese early adolescents. So most of the time, when we talk about the depression, actually we are talking about a major depressive disorder. In the 2017, the WHO reported that actually more than 300 million people were suffering from the depression. And according to a previous survey, the estimate 1-year prevalence of the adolescent depression is 4 to 5%. Based on the DSM-5, there are three pieces of the diagnosis criteria. The first one is the individual must experience 5 or more depressions during the same 2-week period. And these symptoms are the depressed mood, marked diminished interest, significant weight changes, sleeping difficulties, psychomotor agitation, fatigue, feelings of the worthlessness, diminished ability to think or to concentrate, or the recurrent thoughts of the death or the recurrent suicide ideation. And it is very important to notice that at least one of the symptoms should be either the depressed mood or the loss of the interest or the pleasure. And the second diagnosis criteria is these symptoms will cause the clinic's significant distress or the impairment in the social function, occupational function, and other functions. And this symptoms is not because of the physiological effects of the substance use or some medical condition. Besides, on the DSM-5, whose purpose is mainly for the diagnosis, actually there are a lot of other instruments to screen the depressive traits. For example, the Hamilton Depression Rating Scale, the Bake Depression Inventory, and the Center for the Epidemiology Studies Depression Scale with the short name, the CESD. This study will focus on the CESD first, so let's talk about it. Firstly, it is developed by the Radloff in 1979 and with 20 items. This instrument requires the participants to rate the frequency of some certain events or some certain ideas in the last week. According to Radloff's own theory, this instrument is 4-factor structures, and the 4 factors are respectively are the somatic complaints, depressed affect, positive affect, and interpersonal problems. And it demonstrates the good reliability and validity not only for the people with the mental health disorder, but also for the people with some clinic diagnosis. However, this structure could be unstable crossing the different regions, crossing different countries, and even for some countries, the structure could vary among the crossing the different samples. For example, in China, for the university students, CESD has only 3 factors, somatic symptoms, depressed affect, and anhedonia. But for the Chinese elders, it is only find 2 factors included, the positive affection and the negative affection. Since the 2010, China has initiated a national family survey named the CFPS every 2 years. The full name of a CFPS is the Chinese Family Pioneer Studies. And in the 2018, the researchers in CFPS program adopted a new version items to investigate the individual's depressive disorder. And this scale is based on the CESD. So this research, our research, was aimed to test the reliability and validity of these new scales for the Chinese adolescents. We adopted the CFPS data collected in the 2018. Actually, it is the newest data. The data collected in 2020 was not released yet. So this data, this batch of the data is the newest data we can get. And 899 observations were included in this stage, in this research, and they were ranging from 10 to 15 years old during the survey time. There are three instruments included in this research. The first one is a 5-point Rosenberg self-esteem scales, and the second measurement is a 14 items questionnaires, which is aimed to investigate the adolescents' negative performance in schools. And the most important measurement is the depression, the 8-item short depressive trait screening scales based on the CESD. So here is the questionnaires. You can see that this questionnaires requires the participants to rate the frequency from the 1 to 4 according to the symptoms. And you can see that the item 4 and item 6, they are asking the questions about the positive side, but other questions are asking the questions about the negative side. So we hypothesize that there are two factors in these scales. So we adopted the CFA analysis to examine the constructive validity. And at the same time, we combined the approach of the puzzling. The puzzling technique has several advantages. First, it can enhance the scale's commonality, and it can also increase the common to unique ratio for each indicators. And most importantly, the puzzling method can reduce the random error, and these advantages bring some benefits to us. Compared to just use the individual item, puzzling approaches could make the aggregating scores more approximate to the distribution of the target constructive. And after the step of the CFA, we conducted the correlations between the depression and self-esteem and the negative performance in schools, and all the data analysis were done in R. So here is the CFA model of the scales. You can see that there are only two factors included in the dimension of the anhedonia. So I fixed the factor loadings of the two items as the same. And for the other symptoms, I assigned them into the three puzzles. And these three puzzles belong to the dimension of the negative affection, the dimension of negative affection and cognition. And you can see that all the factor loadings were above the 0.4, so which is quite good. And the correlations between the two factors was 0.34, and the model fit was quite good. For example, the ratio of the chi-square and the degree of the freedom is less than 5, and the CFF value equal to 1. And the SRN values was the 0.01. So here is the R script to construct the structure of the CFA models. And by the way, the reliability is quite good. The Cronbach alpha value is 0.72. Next, we did the invariance test to see if the questionnaire is practical for the genders. Crossing the genders and crossing the locations. So let's talk about the genders first. The baseline group was a female group, and the compared group was a male adolescent. The first model, we just want to see the configured invariance. We did something for the compared model. We fixed the structure, but left the parameters in the equations free. And in the second model, for the compared groups, we fix the structure and the factor loadings according to the baseline group. And in the final model, for the compared group, we fixed not only the structural factor loadings, but also we fixed the intercept. Then we did a chi-square test to see if there are any differences between the model 1 and the model 2, we see that the differences was not significant. So that proved the weak invariance. So next, we compare the model 2 and the model 3, and we found that again, it is not significant. So this step proved the strong invariance crossing the genders. Likewise, we did the same things for the locations. So again, this step proves that the invariance crossing the locations. So that means this questionnaire is practical for the adolescents living in a rural area, and also is good for the adolescents living in the urban area. So next we did the SEM model to see the correlations between the depression and self-esteem and the negative performance in schools. And here is a whole model containing the latent variables and indicator, but we will just focus on the correlations between the latent variables. So let us see this picture. And it's quite clear that you can see that the dimension of the negative affection and cognition, this factor is correlated with self-esteem and the negative performance significantly. But for the dimension of the anhedonia, you can find there is only the correlations between it and the self-esteem. You cannot see the real relationship between it and the negative school performance. So it's quite interesting. We will discuss it later. So in summary, this research aims to find the constructive validity of these short scales in CFPS, and our results suggested it has a good constructive validity. And moreover, these results suggested that this questionnaire on this structure is applicable across the genders and the locations. So next, let's talk about criterion validity. We found that both dimensions of the depression are correlated to the self-esteem. This results quite makes sense because according to a longitudinal meta-analysis, we know that the low level of the self-esteem is one of the causes of the depression. That means the relationship between these two variables is not a simple correlative relationship. Actually, it's a cause and effect relationship. So our result is consistent with this theory. So next, let's talk about the relationship between the depression and the negative performance in schools. Actually, only one the factor of the negative affection and cognition, and only this factor is associated with adolescents' negative performance in schools. Well, previously it was found that the social support in school is a protective factors for preventing the depression. However, the problems in schools are the risk factors. So this finding explained that the negative affection and cognition, they actually correlate to the negative experience in schools. But however, we know that the social support in schools is a protective factors. So we can say that maybe the anhedonia might only correlated with the support in school, because anhedonia, it asks questions about the positive side. So so that means anhedonia might only correlated with the positive side in schools as well. For example, the schools, the support in the schools, or the encouragement from the teachers or something like that. The anhedonia might not correlate to the negative side of the schools. So here is the references. And thanks for your attention very much. Here's my contact. If you have any suggestions or the comments towards this research, please don't be hesitate to contact me. And thank you very much again. Have a nice day.